developers are going to wrap up the starting folder of the JavaScript Foundations course by going into 04-log so that we can talk about the log function that we're going to use pretty much every day while you're writing JavaScript. So I'm going to fire this up and I'm going to put in the live server. I'm going to open up live server, dock them over here to the right, dock over the Visual Studio Code over to the left for the environment that I want you to get used to working in. So now that I'm in here, what's the log function? So a log function is a function that we're going to do to write logs to a particular location. In the world of JavaScript, it's actually going to be logged inside of the browser in a particular tab that I'm going to show you in a second. Whether you're working on the front end or the back end, in many of the different layers of the back end, there's going to be a mechanism for you to log information. The information is intended for you to understand the health of your application and to get more details about when things go wrong. So I have started this 04 log file with some variables already declared from the types file, from the types video that we were looking at a moment ago. And this is the information in a nice little pretty graph that we're going to be looking at and developing more as we go through the course. But now what I want to do is I want to open up actually the console. If I go to the console, every now and then you see some of these errors. So I'm going to hit Control-Shift-R just to get rid of some of the errors that the browser might have just encountered as it's firing up for the first time. So in here, inside of the console tab of the developer tools, if this was expanded, it would look more like this. But I want to click on the console. You'll see that it's highlighted there. So let me dock it back over to the left. So what's the console and how do I invoke it? So first off, I'm going to write it just right underneath here. I'm going to write the word console. In fact, look at Intellisense is helping us out. There's an object available for us in the browser and in a JavaScript environment called the console. There's a number of things that we can talk about here, but really importantly, we want to be able to use a function that is a property of the console object. And so how we access objects and functions and properties that belong to an object, we use the dot, all right? A dot, a period. This is called dot notation. When I use a dot to drill down into an object to access a property or function, it's called using, we refer to it as using dot notation. There's a function in here called log. Okay, now look, Intellisense, let me maximize this window. Intellisense is helping us out in giving us some tips on how to use the log function. So a function, you're going to notice that when I do this, when I throw the open and close parentheses at the end of that word, right? This implies that this is a function, and this is us invoking or calling. So when we execute a function, it means that we are calling the function. Okay. You can also say that when we execute a function, we are invoking the function. Or you can simply say we are executing the function, right? That means that we want this function to run. And the purpose of this function, right now, if I were to dock this over here to the left, if I just hit save like that, let's see if we can tell if anything happens. Here comes the page, and we can't actually see anything happening here because to the function, we need to pass it an argument. So here are the arguments that we're going to pass. Argument 1, and I'm actually going to pass it 2 arguments. Argument 2. So the things that we pass to a function when we invoke it are called arguments, right? So this is one argument, and this is the second argument. Notice here how they got printed out. Right, so these strings got printed out. These are string literals, and they got printed out directly into we say they got logged to the console. So they got logged directly to the console. These are string literals. What I want to do next is I want to invoke the log function, right? And so even though it's the console.log function, you should get used to people saying log, right? Just so invoke the log function. If you're in the browser, what does it mean to log? It means to execute the console.log function. And I'm going to pass to it now the variable that we have defined is message. And what we have is the word true showing up here, because true is the value, right? True is the value that is being pointed to by the message property. If I were to change this to something more elaborate, like this is more elaborate, right? And let me put an exclamation because I'm really happy about that. We're going to see that, yes, the variable is still pointing to the value. This is more elaborate, but now this is also being logged here. And so I can do this a number of different ways if I want to actually combine them, right? So now I'm passing to the console log function 3 arguments, 0, 1, and 2. Notice how I refer to them as 0, 1, and 2. This is the first argument is said to be at position 0, right? And the second argument is said to be at position 1. So 0, 1, and 2. This is going to come in real handy when we talk about arrays. But I've printed out now 3 strings. We are going to log this whenever we want to know, hey, what's the value of message? So that if I wanted to say later on, oh, actually, let me do this. And I'll show you the difference between the graph and this. I'm going to say now message is, this is now changed. And why it's important to kind of like take a peek and see how things are evolving. I've changed the value of message. It started out as this is more elaborate, and then I finally changed it to this has changed. Notice that in the graph, because the nature of the graph is that it's going to grab the last value of message, it shows us as this has changed. Meanwhile, in the console log, it was immediate. It grabbed that value, it logged it, it showed it to us here at the bottom, and then we changed it and we logged it again, and when it got logged, it logged with a new value. So this log mechanism, this utility, this tool, we're going to use to kind of like put down breadcrumbs for ourselves so that we can kind of trace back and keep track of the different changes that might be happening inside of our application. So it's really handy. I can do this now. Let me go down here and I'm going to console.log age. And I'm going to console.log separately now age year. And then finally for the depth. So I'm going to do all 3 of them. Ooh, I made a mistake there. Put a semicolon. Oh, now notice my errors. Very interesting. Now, right, so this is important. Like you had to bring to bear all the tools. The error that I have going on here on the left-hand side is actually not being picked up by my problems tab. That's unfortunate. But it is being picked up by my console. It says, look, uncut reference error, adage year is not defined. So that means that this guy that I'm referencing on line 38, so I go over here and I find line 38, this guy's not defined. FYI, the console is a really great tool that if I just wanted a little bit more clarity, I can come over here and I can click. Let me bring this up so that it's not behind my head. So I can see here that the reference age year, right, adage year is not defined. It's complaining about line 38. And in case this line number wasn't really clear to me, I could click onto it and I'm going to get brought to, let me get some area here. I'm going to get brought to my actual file that's running. Line 38, it gets highlighted and it tells me what the error is. Notice that I switched tabs, so I got to click back over to the console though, because I want to make sure that, I want to switch back over to the console so I can see error messages. Let me click clear here, because I just want to get rid of all those error messages. And let me fix this error on the right hand. Age, years, I'm copying, I'm going to paste it. I'm going to hit save, and here comes the console now, right, with the correct messages. All 3 numbers, they get logged like that. So that's really nice and convenient, right? Now, this is going to be true. Let me finish doing this for my console.log of is team member. Okay, you can use Intellisense to help you out. Console.log, and let it complete a little bit, is smoker. Notice I'm ending all of my statements with the semicolon, and I'm seeing all these values come out. I can do this for the objects, right? And I'm going to output an object, and then I am going to, let me go to the bottom here, and I am going to console.log a null example, and I'm going to console.log left alone. Okay, so all of those things now are being logged. We can see that the object, so super cool. If you remember that the object in this screen, in the graph, it shows up a little different. And so it does here in the console with a little caret that later on we're going to use to expose the properties that we're going to build inside of the object. We got the booleans, true and false. Notice here that the browser does give us a little bit of a different hint that this is a boolean, and it's different than if it was a false string. So let me go and change this so that you can see the difference of what this looks like, because it's little things like that are going to be really important to you a little bit later on. Here's the false string, and here's false the boolean. The object again with the little carrots, kind of cute, and the null and undefined, notice those guys are grayed out. So now this is the only thing about this. When you console log out the variable values, right? When you console log out the variable values, it's kind of missing something. It's missing some context, like what is this 20? What does 20.5 mean? So there's a little way that we can get around that, or we can add more information to that. And VS Code is really helpful in this situation, because what I want to do is I want to double click age, and then I'm just going to surround it. If I just hit the open curly bracket, just hit open curly bracket, it's going to wrap it. It's going to wrap the actual parameter. I'm sorry, it's going to wrap the actual variable in curly brackets. So all I do is type the open, and it'll type the close for me. So again, with the word highlighted, I type the shift for the curly bracket, and it's going to wrap the variable for me in curly brackets. Now, the thing about what that does is that it actually logs it as an object. Okay, and we're going to learn a little bit more about this later on. But here it actually wraps this object, wraps that variable as an object. And in this case, it's just helpful because it gives us the name and then the value, right? The name and the value. So that's just really helpful, nice little tool. You're going to learn how to do that a little bit later. So you might want to come back to this video just to be like, hey, what was he doing to get that those names out there? Because you could do that here as well, whether they're booleans or whether well, an object is an object. That's not that. Let's do it to this one. Oh, I double click it and then hit the curlies. Double click, hit the curly. And we'll see that now all of these get logged with a particular value. So this doesn't actually change the value of the objects underneath. Notice that is a team member still true? Is a team member is true? The is smoker is false. It doesn't change the values. It just presents the data a little differently. So here's that we have what we have there in logging. All right, so really helpful. If you get if you get some errors in here, just come back to this video so that you can get used to how to execute the console log function. Again, we first must access the object called console, and then we do the dot for dot notation to drill down and access a property of the console object. We want to go after the log function, and then we do open close parens. That is us invoking the function. So here we are invoking the function, and we want to pass it something. So here's our opportunity to pass a value down, right? Now that could be a string, or I could just pass a number. Oh wait, I'm sorry, a number. I was thinking out loud. So now we're just going to pass a number, and when this renders, this is where that's at. Okay, so this has been a quick video on using the console log. We're going to use that in the rest of the course. probably profusely, so that you can get messages down here, as well as using the graph as this gets more and more involved here on the top as well. And so then we're going to come back and do one more video on one more tool that I want you to learn how to use differently to help you debug later on as you progress through the course.